It is June 7th, 1944, the next day, to the greatest amphibious invasion in history. The Utah and Omaha beaches are red yet again with struggle, yet there is another wave of struggle, a wave of relentless violence breaking on shore. One of the German soldiers, a hunked-down Klaus Miller of the now practically overwhelmed 709th Infantry Division in Normandy, is looking at what chills him more than the fire of a battleship, a column of small, identical, rugged vehicles that came streaming inland apparently without end. He puts the number of these particular American vehicles at 117 within 2 hours. They are all shiny, fresh struck on some fantastic production line. They are not tanks, they are not huge artillery pieces, they are jeeps. This all-encompassing machine made its official debut as the 1x4-ton 4x4 command reconnaissance truck. But it was more than a transportation machine. To the Germans, the Jeep was the material embodiment of the American industrial power, a force that changed the nature of war. It demonstrated that the war was not going to be won by the skillfulness of tactics or by the glory of special equipment defense, but by the ability to transport and by standardization of the equipment, as well as by mere unstoppable mass. This conflict between the craftsmanship of the Wehrmacht and the American assembly lines and efficiency would turn out to be the one decisive factor of the battle for Europe. In order to see the shock that the Jeep provided, we should refer to its desperate conception. During the year 1940, the US Army was in urgent need of a lightweight, rough, and four-wheel drive reconnaissance automobile following the war in Europe. They had virtually impossible list of specifications they sent to more than 135 manufacturers. The vehicle must weigh up to 1,300 pounds. The number of pounds that can be carried must be 600 pounds, and the time they have is only 49 days to come up with the first prototype. Only 3 companies originally replied: Bantam, Willys Overland, and in time, the giant Ford Motor Company. Bantam designed the first, the Blitz buggy, to the unbelievable weight requirement. Bantam, however, did not have the necessary production capacity to do a mass manufacturing, which demanded guaranteed volume. Willys Overland introduced the quad that was a bit heavier of 2,160 pounds, but had a mighty powerful engine, the Go Devil L head. This was a low compression ratio engine, a simple, most reliable workhorse, and more durable, as well as easier to maintain. Ford created the Pygmy, which would later be optimized by the designer as a mass production version. The Willys design that was perfected into MB was finally chosen. More importantly, in order to realize the unrealistic production targets required to achieve a global war, the US government played the strategic masterstroke. They licensed the Willys design and gave the blueprints, including the Go Devil engine requirements, to Ford. This was not sharing the design, but enforcing total standardization. This was an extreme, obligatory standardization, which was the secret of the battlefield strength of the Jeep. The specifications were the same, including a bolt and a washer, whether the GPW was manufactured by Willys or Ford. This had the effect that the Willys Go Devil engine could be replaced in a Ford-built chassis and vice versa, with only the normal GI tools. Between 1941 and 1945, the US manufactured more than 640,000 Jeeps, an astounding figure, which reached its highest level at a rate of some one new vehicle every 90 seconds. This production in itself had to involve the US industrial base in the investment way beyond the means of Germany. Next is the Go Devil engine. This 4-cylinder 2.2-litre engine only made 60 horsepower, but with a low compression ratio of about $6.4 to $1, it was able to tolerate the poor quality and low octane gasoline that was frequently offered in the combat areas. Its side valve or L-head design ensured few moving parts and made it easier to maintain in the field. The same was the case with Germany, whose counterpart, the Kubelwagen Type 82, was an excellent design with a short production of 50,000 vehicles. Being lighter and air-cooled, the two-wheel drive 2WD and increased dependence on special parts of Volkswagen restricted its cross-country utility and flexibility in repairs. American superiority was approximately 13-1, and the fact that the design was standardized meant that all the vehicles stayed in operation much longer. The entry of the Jeep in Normandy was not a military movement, it was a military tidal movement. The equipment came not in columns of hundreds, but in an almost continuous stream, which overwhelmed German evaluation abilities. The ideal filler of vessels was Jeeps. They fitted into the LSTS landing ship, tanked to such a degree as to be packed in large numbers, and most importantly, they were provided with propellers, which could be maneuvered directly off the ramp and onto the sand by themselves. A typical British LCT landing craft tank with a load of 30 to 40 Jeeps, or an American LST with a load of 50 to 70 or more, stacked one behind the other, bumper to bumper, with their trailers. On June 10th, 4 days later, after the D-Day, more than 12,000 working vehicles were landed by Allies. By the termination of the first week, more than 30,000 tons of vehicular freight had already been discharged. It meant the amphibious trucks needed to be running continuously, and the prefabricated Mulberry harbors, an integrated, mechanized logistical system which the Wehrmacht did not possess a match to. German intelligence, rushing to evaluate the build-up, was instantly terrified. Official report by Major Hauptmann Vera Lindemann, June 9th, creates an image of confused panic. He said that Americans were more numerous than German bullets. He noticed the cold American approach to the property that had been damaged. Jeeps were not taken care of and fixed. They were just disposed of like dead shells. And the next one in the queue was taken at once. Even the scenery emphasized the superiority of the Jeep. The bocage, the network of sunken lanes and huge, centuries-old hedges, was supposed by the Germans to be a natural bottleneck, forcing mechanical progress to an impossible halt. The four-wheel drive, 4x4 capability of the Jeep, combined with the rough Dynaspicer axles and a relatively high ground clearance of 8 inches, gave it the power to make it across the thick mud, broken fields and, in many instances, even through the hedges themselves, with a few field modifications. Picture of comparison between the 4x4 Willys Jeep, which is going through deep mud, and a two-wheel drive Kubelwagen, which is struggling on the loose soil. The German Kubelwagen, made on the basis of a passenger car chassis, obtained poor traction in soft mud. One member of the elite Panzer Division reported that the Jeep had given each and every US rifle squad the tactical mobility that the Germans had considered the reserve of its most armored formations. It was now possible to move the American infantry faster than the tanks, bypassing the strong points of the Germans and quickly creating a fire superiority position with their mounted machine guns. Efforts to flank German fixed positions often outflanked the positions before they could respond. The greatest divergence between the two armies was found in their school of thought regarding equipment, a conflict between the Artisan Model and the industrial model. This Wehrmacht was an asset-based model with a religious veneration of equipment, which was a result of the lack of resources. All trucks, all half-tracks, all tanks were considered as war critical. The vehicles damaged were removed to the line to be repaired intensively, especially needing unique, rare parts and weeks to do in special field workshops, known as Kraftfahrzeug-Instandsetzungstrupps. The sophistication of German designs, such as the complicated transmission on a Tiger tank or the special parts on an Opel Blitz truck, was such a special time-consuming job, requiring a skilled repairman. German army depended on high-octane synthetic fuel that was high in specialization, which was made through a complex process known as Fischer-Tropsch. This was a resource that was now crucially short because of the indefatigable Allied strategic bombing of refineries, which left many units running below capacity or using unreliable fuel combinations. The US Army instead chose to go with a capacity-based framework whereby the rate of replacement was more important in comparison to repair. US logisticians came up with an estimate rate of attrition, virtually reducing Jeep to a perishable asset. A broken window did not justify fixing it in weeks. It required a replacement. An observer of Germans told about American field repair in their own words. American did not fix up a vehicle riddled with holes. They did 1-second part replacements. The most startling was a crew team of installing an entire Go Devil engine or a transfer case in plain view of mortar gun fire that could be accomplished in less than 2 hours due to the accessibility and standardization of the engine. The ultimate charge against them came in a letter of a staff officer of the Germans who was captured, which read, "They are rich guys who fritter Jeeps better than ammo." It was a weapon of deep psyche that American industrial capacity could take the losses and provide replenishment at no time, which was the mentality that led the frontline German soldiers to believe that they were confronting an opponent that could not be emptied. The brilliance of the Jeep was its flexibility. It was a piece of blank canvas on which the American soldier could easily paint endless tactical solutions and proved to be flexible without the German engineering. The robust, bare-bones frame promoted the adoption of field changes to turn it into a weapon on the move. The most widespread was to have the heavy point .50 caliber Browning machine gun, the M2 heavy barrel HB, mounted on a pedestal mount. These gun jeeps were devastating our mobile fire support, which was able to tear light German vehicles and positions and work well in high-speed reconnaissance, also called recce. The standard units welded vertical wire cutters and steel reinforcements to the front bumpers in order to cut through German booby traps and cables that were spread along road causes. These crude modifications were in the form of hedgehog and were necessary before the specialized Rhino tank cutters were put into wide deployment. Jeeps were used as scrubbing up mobile radio command posts where they could be used in frontline communication, towed the 37mm and 57mm anti-tank guns, prime mover, with ease and converted into frontline ambulances by fitting litter racks on the rear of the car, which could easily evacuate casualties, cash evac, where a larger Dodge truck could not keep pace. The difference in logistical foundation was literally and psychologically devastating. To the Jeep, which made it easily gain speed over the rough area on the ready-to-go gasoline, the Wehrmacht continued to be heavily dependent on animal transport. By the mid-war, the German army employed more than 600,000 horses to ensure the transportation of artillery and wagons with supplies. These were snail-like animals whose forage needs were enormous and whose exposure to shelling was great, as well as their tendency to delay the pace of the offensive operations of the frontline troops, which was crippling to the very high speed with which the wartime battles were fought. This gave a strategic weakness. The American supply lines were rapid and difficult to interdict. The German supply lines were slow, predictable, and weak. The mere sight of American columns of Jeeps running as fast as 65 miles per hour on gasoline alone, and German supply being crippled by vulnerable and slow-moving horse-drawn carts plodding in the mud, convinced the common lancer that it is the German soldier who were engaged in a technologically and logistically better than even war. A report issued to Field Marshal Erwin Rommel concluded the discrepancy in the form of a new war. This is motorized, industrialized war on a scale that has never been contemplated before. Instead of fighting with an army, we are fighting with a factory. The last crushing blow by the Jeep was a tactical and ideological one. Real strategic worth was released when the Jeep was used in the Operation Cobra, late in July 1944. Once the German lines were broken by the huge aerial bombardment, the Allies had to capitalize on the gap immediately. The mechanized infantry and supply trains were powered by more than 15,000 support vehicles, primarily Jeeps, and the 2.5-ton GMC CCKW Juice and a half, and were moving at a speed never seen before. The large motor pool implied that even in case the Germans managed to cause severe losses to the transport lines, the Allies had the backup capacity to continue the chase. The reliability of the Jeep and its capacity to hold many ammunition had been completely relied upon in this phase of exploitation, which was known as the legendary Red Ball Express convoy system, which was capable of quickly enclosing the German troops and subsequently liberating Paris. The American logistical tail was now able to keep up with the spearhead, a notion which the German army could not handle. The equality of the war machine also reached the core of the Nazi ideology. American troops had long been the victim of German propaganda, which depicted them as disunited racially and inept in their technology. This story was immediately broken when the German soldiers saw the black American soldiers working, servicing, and engaging in combat with the same efficiency and technical competence as the whites. These men, commonly in key engineer and logistical units, were important to ensure that the standardized Jeep-infused logistics was moving. And this showed that competence, not race, was the driving factor in American strength. The Jeep became, in the last evaluation, the perfect symptom of the American model of industrial power. It was simple, standardized, and in massive size. The words of the German tank commander captured are the most obvious conclusion. The Germans perfected single vehicles like craftsmen. The Americans perfected factories. It was artisans versus assembly lines, and the assembly lines won. The values that the Jeep had enshrined in the post-war world, such as mass production, standardisation, and rough simplicity were taken up throughout the world. Even the subsequent economic miracle of Germany was constructed on these ideas, and the most significant example of the latter is the design and manufacturing philosophy of Volkswagen Beetle. The Beetle, just like the Jeep, was a success since it was inexpensive, easy, and could be repaired anywhere. The interminable, the same Jeeps pouring out of the LSTs into French countryside, was not just a small piece of equipment, but a veritable sign of the death of one type of war and the birth of another where logistics, not cavalry, was the bugle call. It was not a ride, as the Jeep was the mechanical demonstration of the industrial superiority of the USA. It demonstrated to the world that the ability to produce was the weapon that could have the most power in the modern war. The German troops, which looked on at these interminable columns marching in full awareness, were able to perceive that they were now confronted by a factory machine, a power which could never be halted. And in case you were interested in this in-depth look into the logistical war of D-Day, you can like this video, subscribe to more stories of the WTW, and leave a comment below. What was it about the design or the production of the Jeep that you consider to have been the most decisive? Thanks for watching.